everybody. Welcome to InPsightRadio. I'm your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. How are you? How is everybody doing? You hanging in there? You going stir crazy yet? Are you living in a part of the world or the country where you haven't been able to get out? Oh my goodness, this has been the weirdest summer. I mean, honestly, the summer of 2020, which will go down in history as the summer where everybody learned to read different genres of books, learned some sort of home craft, decided to bake with unknown objects that were still left in your cupboard. I mean, this year, right? Has it not made us industrious? I tell you, I've been getting really industrious. I've been gradually adding to my music studio, getting ready to record a new album. It's funny. I've been making my world really small in order to cope with the fact that I can't get out and do the big things that I normally would do. And everybody's been at the mercy and staffing of people's schedules, availabilities, people's families coming down with COVID and being quarantined. I mean, oh my God. It's like a Mario Brothers game. You're playing Mario Kart, except for with deadly pathogens, really grumpy people. And here in Montana, we're experiencing full tilt meltdowns with people. People are grabbing guns and shooting at each other in neighborhoods and just stuff that we normally don't have out here in Montana. And, it's so easy to stereotype any state or any person or anything. And if you're listening to the news, you'll see a big political map with Montana coming in as red can be. And actually, that's not true. Montana is an extremely purple state. We're a live and let live state, and you're going to find asshats anywhere. Yet, for the most part, even though we're an open carry state and we're a huge gun state, a lot of it is because we've got some really big, scary animals that sometimes come down on ranch land that you want to not have to shoot, of course. Yet it gets really rough, when you're in a gun state like Montana. And I'm not a big gun person. We don't own guns. We may have to get a hold of one because the bears are now coming down into all the campgrounds and literally just slicing open tents and eating people. because we're living in 2020, killer bears. Well, really, it's because their food supplies have been dwindling and there's food down in the campgrounds. And the campgrounds right now are really stuffed with people up here in Montana. It's a little crazy. So we don't own guns, yet it's interesting to see that people who've owned them for a long time in Montana generally don't turn the guns on one another. I mean, that's just odd, really. They're generally for hunting. And if, you carry one in your sidearm or something, if you're going to go way up in the mountains, and it's a very last resort. If you encounter something big and scary, that's going to give you a hard time or eat you. It's a very last resort. I mean, even when encountering deadly animals, people will shoot the gun in the air, hoping to scare off the grizzly bear, or believe it or not, big bull moose. They're huge. They're like 10, 12 feet tall. They're huge. And they're really mean and they have really bad eyesight. And if you accidentally come onto one, they will gore the hell out of you if you can't get out of the way. And it's really hard to outrun something whose legs are taller than you. I mean, it's like an angry, furry dinosaur. So I'm not a proponent of people shooting animals in the face with a gun. Obviously not. Yet I'm just trying to paint a picture for you of what it's like to live in Montana with a lot of bears and crazy things and people carrying guns when usually people aren't turning those guns on one another. There's far more inner city shootings than there are in Montana. Granted, one could say that's because of per capita issues, but it's also just a culture thing. I mean, you're really not shooting somebody here unless there's something real wrong with you. So the fact that we've had a ton in my hometown of Billings, Montana, of inner city shootings is really crazy because we just don't have that many here. It's not the thing. I mean, maybe stabbings, yes, drunk driving, people running you over with the car, other really weird stuff, but shooting people isn't usually the first go-to in Montana before now. So people are really getting into a strange space, a headspace, being locked in. And, we're coming up on a lot of changes in this COVID timeframe. And we're seeing, again, a lot of violence where we normally wouldn't because people just aren't meant to be locked into a room for months at a time. And at least in Montana, we have a mask mandate, yet the state is not shut down, which really it probably should be because our COVID cases for us are going up. And, it's tough because Montana is a state where a large portion of our yearly state budget is gained through tourism. So, you had people writing to the governor saying, please don't close our state down. We'll go bankrupt. We can't not do a summer. So I feel kind of sad and bad for Governor Bullock. He's been in a really no-win position. He didn't want to open the state at all, but he had to. He kept it hardcore lockdown as long as he could. And over this summertime, it's been open. So we're probably going to be seeing shutdowns again here in Montana. My looking into the future, September, October, I think if our cases continue to go, and they've been going, they've been raising. So hopefully the deaths will not, echo the caseloads raising, but I think we're going to see that too as we get into flu season and the flu combines with COVID, and I'm just seeing that there's going to be problems. So there's been a lot going on, in 2020. And of course, we've had the Democratic Convention where Joe Biden was nominated for the Democratic nominee for the presidency. So, there's a lot happening. People are getting edgy about the pandemic. They're getting edgy about being shut in. They're getting edgy about potential election. And I say potential. Yes, we're going to have the election. No, it's not going to get waylaid. No, a bunch of craziness isn't going to happen because nobody really wants to go to prison for that, gang. And, it's brought up a lot in people. What is important in our lives? What kind of person do you want to be? That's really what this has been about, is take away all our toys in America, take away our distractions, take away our movies, take away our ability to go to the bar every night, take away all this. And who the hell are we behind our doors? That literally is the other part of this COVID timeframe. Who are we behind our closed doors? Not who we say we are, not the labels we wear, not the fancy car we drive, not our clothes, not our business cards, nothing. Who are we behind closed doors? And there are marriages that are excelling right now. There are marriages that are falling apart right now because we can't run away from ourselves. It's intense, right? So, as we've entered into this new moon in Leo time frame at the very, middle part of August here, we're looking at August of 2020. This new moon in Leo is a time frame for great creation. It's time for standing up courageously. And it's time for self-evaluation. And it's time for coming out of areas that we've been slacking on to do something far more powerful. And it's intense. So I've been telling people, okay, make your world really, really small so that you can make it huge. In other words, take your energy and focus it locally where you can make the most difference. And that local raise of vibration is going to affect everything upward. And perception is another great big one that we've been, being asked to look at. And this is a time frame where people's perceptions are just being challenged. Mine included, everybody's are being challenged. And we are literally being asked to give away our labels, our partisanship, all these things to be able to come together for a common goal of goodness, health, and prosperity for the entire world. And that means giving away all of our ideas that, if I have more than you, then that makes me a success and you not as much a success. Can you believe we have literally built, get this, we have literally built a country in the United States we've built it on elevating people through how much stuff they have, how much money they have. That means they're somebody special. That means they're successful. It's bleh. So this COVID time frame is coming in, asking us all to move into a new way to not only self-identify, but identify with those around us and be bridge builders and be solution bringers. And this is really asking us to evaluate every single thing in our life, how we make money, how we relate with our family, who do we say we are versus when the going gets tough. Who are you when the going gets tough? I would like to think I run into every battle with the righteous sword of doing the right thing, so to speak, but I don't do that. I mean, I'll get involved if it's something I'm called to get involved with. Other times I am watching people clash their ram horns smashing into a million pieces, and I just back right off and think, this isn't my fight. See you later, because it's not. So the COVID time frame is also asking us to check out what are you being called to do? And which brings me into more of a focus on our topic, which of course is about the COVID timeframe, but it's really also about who are we called to be in this time frame? Who are we called to be in this time frame? And it's, for me, that can be intimidating because I personally was raised in the old world. I'm Generation X, and I was raised where all the standard stupid 1980s crap that we all got hit with, those of us in Gen X. The more money you make, the more successful you are, the bigger title you have, the bigger, non-failure you are, get a bigger house. Bigger is better, bigger, 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 bigger. Because in the 1980s, it was all about consumer avarice. And, it's just where the world was at, man. It was weird. So here we are, Gen X, and the children that we're raising. And actually, the kids that Gen X are raising, we're like, make a small footprint. Don't worry about throwing yourself into debt for crap. You don't need to do that because we've already gone through that lesson, which is nice, right? We can help our Gen Zs and our millennials and say, listen, you don't have to spend all this money. You don't have to move into a McMansion to be a success. Who you are is a success, right? So we're having to look at how we affect the world. And that really is going to reflect in how we choose leadership all over the world. Because our leadership is going to need to, whoever it is, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, big fat house party, I don't care what party it is, just the person who's going to be effective in this time frame, male, female, non-binary, it doesn't matter, is somebody who can actually get on board with the idea that we are a collective governance system. And yes, somebody's got to, make the decision and check the box, so to speak. Somebody's got to be the figurehead. Somebody's got to steer the boat. Yet the steering part, the coordinates are all put together by everybody. So we're being asked, who are you in the world right now? Who are you? And when we look at leadership styles, we've had an individual in the White House whose leadership style has been very absolute, very, quote, law and order, the iron fist of justice. And really, Mr. Trump's leadership style is a perfect example of what was very successful in the old world, smashing your fist on the desk, firing somebody that you don't agree with, the ultimate alpha male that surrounds himself with lackeys. I mean, welcome to the forging of the world since about 200 AD. That's pretty much what this has been modeled after. So certainly he's not the first person to go into the world with this particular modality. What we're going to find is that absolute iron fist on the table kind of approach isn't going to hold up well with not only the feminine time frame, but just the spiritual physics of such an interconnected world. And that's not personal to Mr. Trump or anybody else whose leadership style happens to be that iron fist of it's my way or the highway. That used to be very popular. Problem is, the OS of the world is just not really going to support it at this time. People are too educated. We read. We want to get along with our neighbors, no matter what you're doing in the ballot box, man. We want to live in a safe, beautiful place where every single human being has the same opportunities. And I've been finding this as I've been speaking with a lot of folks, a lot of my friends who are big conservatives, and I call them God and country conservatives, the John Wayne Republicans toting guns out here in Montana. I'm as lefty as you go, and we are the best of friends because our hearts want the exact same things. And so it's been interesting because I've been watching leadership styles shift all over the world energetically. And these angels have been telling me this forever. And the bridge candidate that was going to lead us from the old world to the new was Hillary Clinton. And she actually is the president of the United States. She's the 45th elected president. And one of these days, we're going to find all those ballots and all the information is going to come out about how all those voting machines got wiggled. And that perfect 2% that Mr. Trump won by, we're gonna find all this out at some point. Yet she was not the person who universally was chosen, even though the people chose her. Trump got shoved in there, and we have Trump. And now we're coming up on another election. And it's fascinating to me how Mr. Trump is panicking, just really surrounding election fraud. And it's that old saying, God rest my Italian Grandpa Louis in heaven. He used to have this saying, and he'd say, watch what people accuse you of, because that's what they do in their own life the most. And I said, well, Grandpa, I don't understand. And he said, well, just take a look. He said, if somebody's, like if the husband's accusing the wife of cheating all the time, a lot of times they're stepping out on their wife. If you got a boss who's accusing his employees of stealing, he's probably embezzling. Because why would we accuse somebody of something that we had zero idea of how to execute? Think about that. I mean, you kind of have to have an idea of how something would work before you could search for the signs of that, or the supposed signs, and then accuse somebody, right? So this has been super fascinating as I've been watching Mr. Trump just get more and more paranoid about election fraud, election tampering. Well, I saw back in 2017, after the election went down, I was not looking for cheating in the election. I was looking at who got the most votes, who got the most electoral votes, and who'd be the president. And so this time I've set my sights on scan for anything that could be meddled with, anything that could be changed. These might be the votes, but what's the outcome? Not the votes, but the outcome. And I'm not going to give a presidential prediction here on this particular podcast. However, I am saying that I found it fascinating that Mr. Trump is freaking out about so much election fraud because he knows firsthand how it works. It's how it got him elected. And he knows, for all the things Mr. Trump is, he's a very intelligent person, actually. He's very street smart. And so, that's what he's worried about this time around. It's what got him in the White House. And so I've been watching these giant consciousness issues wave through our nation as we decide who we're going to be. And it's very interesting to me. When the facts were brought forward about the election meddling in 2016, how many people who were supporters of Mr. Trump became just violently angry about that, saying that folks who would bring this up had sour grapes and all these things and blah. And I found that big emotional response to be a bit telling, because we don't tend to get really angry with something unless we're pretty sure somebody's right. So then we're going to just defend that to the death by God. And of course, Mr. Trump, of course, he had lots of supporters. He still has a lot of people that truly believe that he is here to help the United States and that he's the last front. Many people believe this. Millions of people believe this, that he is the last front on really the American dream or the American way of life. And these folks aren't entirely off base with that. Donald Trump really is the face of the old world. And if your idea of America is very little black or brown people, is white people being in positions of power, is women are in the kitchen and men are working, and all these more traditional, quote, traditional ways of looking at the world, if that's your America, then absolutely you're going to look at Donald Trump as the last savior of the last vestige of the last piece of America that's barely hanging on by a hangnail, okay? So when people say, I don't have any idea how people could support Donald Trump, well, I am not personally, a voter for Donald Trump, yet I can, from a spiritual and sociological standpoint, absolutely see how people are clinging to him as the last great white hope. Because that's the world they've lived in their whole life. And that's the world their daddy's daddy lived in. And so, a vote for Donald Trump oftentimes is not even necessarily a vote for Donald. It's more a vote for a way of life that people just don't want to let go of. And regrettably, gang, the world evolves, everything evolves. And the United States is not going to evolve into this socialist nation where all the lefties run everything and make all the people on the right give up their religion and force them to recycle. And all of this weird, the right's version of the left dystopia is, taking all their 15-year-old daughters in to get abortions right away when they're pregnant. And all of this fear, right? And it's not going to turn into the authoritarian hell that the left thinks that it's going to turn into either. This is the closest we're going to flirt with it right now. So, and compared to some real hardcore authoritarian countries like North Korea and, the Soviet Union, this is horrifying for America, but it doesn't even touch the genocide that the warlords enact in Africa. I mean, there's a lot of places on the earth, gang, that are a lot more hardcore than USA. Doesn't mean that I don't think we should clean up our act here, because we absolutely need to. Yet just in saying all of this, I'm hoping that you can hear my tone that this is not a political conversation. This is a conversation about evolution in world events. The world doesn't stay the same. Rome fell. After a while, Rome's way of doing things weren't going to hold up. So when we look at what's going on with Mr. Trump in the world, one of the big things that we are seeing is that this is a gentleman right now who is recognizing that the old world modality that made him a rock star for so many years is quickly becoming not the thing anymore. And that's why a lot of people are frightened that he's not going to become the president again. It has nothing to do with being a Republican, because, gang, come on. Donald Trump was a New York Democrat for 30 years. For as long as he was voting, he was a New York Democrat. And he was big donor to the Clintons. Not Hillary, obviously. He ran against her. But Bill Clinton, big donor. And so, nobody took him that seriously from a political standpoint, even though everybody wanted his money, including the Democrats. They wanted his money and kind of looked the other way on a lot of his skeevy, weird stuff he did. And Donald Trump took an opportunity to ransack a very weak Republican ticket in 2016, and he's good. He's a good front guy, man. For the people who resonate with his message, he's an excellent front person. So out he went. So what we're looking at now is a time frame that is no longer supporting the old world conquest mechanism. And so when we look at this election coming up, we've got an individual up there who is doing what he was groomed to do by his father in the old world. Donald Trump is just going to keep smacking that fist down, causing chaos, trying to be the alpha, recently pardoning. Oh, God, I laughed so hard. You guys, I laughed so hard at this one. He pardoned Susan B. Anthony, who, of course, was heading up the women's suffragettes and many other equality issues at the early 1900s, turn of the century. And I'm sure that was probably an attempt to appeal to women, or I don't know what he was doing. But Susan B. Anthony, he wasn't even reading the history books, right? Because that woman wouldn't want to be pardoned. She relished in the resistance of it. That's what made her her. So again, you have this archetypal white male model coming into, I'm just going to pardon this sweet little lady who, she didn't deserve all that. And it's hilarious to me. It's like, oh, buddy, just sit down. Like when you have that friend at a bar, you have that one loudmouth friend and you just love the hell out of them, but then they get too much whiskey in them and they're just an asshole, right? And you take them to the bar and they get to that point and pretty soon they're just spewing idiot stuff. And so one of the things that my attention has been drawn to in this election is Donald Trump is going in that direction because his modality of being that guy at the bar who's just saying anything to get attention. Because really, the old world modality that he was forged under is no longer working. Okay, and I want you to look out into the world and see this at other places. Totalitarianism, authoritarianism, it's beginning to lose its grip. And there are certain countries where it's pretty embedded, so it's going to keep rolling. But it really never could get its teeth into America, not really. And so what we're seeing are the teeth on the cogs in the wheel are breaking. And so the system is slipping. It's like a transmission that's slipping, right? So that's what we're looking at. And there are so many people, gang, it's important to note this, that are terrified of the loss of the old world because that is the world they've known. So I bring this stuff forward, certainly not to pick on Donald Trump. Goodness, I think he does a good enough job himself of giving himself a hard time in the press. Yet it's to say that this individual He chose a soul lesson here. And that soul lesson was to demonstrate that old world iron fist modality, that hubris, that bust your chest against another guy's chest to see who gets to win, that dodge the bullet that makes you the big guy. He is wearing all of this 100% right up to the finish line, gang. And that's his job. That's what he's going to do. That's what he's here to do. That's why, the universal cogs in the wheel turned, and he was shoved in that place of, I'm having a hard time calling it leadership, because he's done a lot of dividing, and he's led the people who like him. Let's put it to you that way. The rest of them, he's kind of kicked out the car and divided them. And again, that is an old world conquest mechanism. I want you to think about that. I mean, what do you think we did to the indigenous native cultures? If they didn't fall in with us, we smashed them. We genocided them. We killed them all. We rounded them up on reservations. And then we lied about how much land we were going to give them. And then even after that, we subdivided their land and sold it off. So what he's doing is just enacting a caricature of an energy so we can see that it no longer works in the world. The divide and conquer doesn't work. The you're with me or against me doesn't work, And in the middle of all of this stuff, George Floyd was killed and became a far bigger iconic name in history than Donald Trump is ever going to be. So, I mean, these absolute dissolutions of system that we are seeing, it's important to notice and important to take heart that there are going to be people freaking out because they honestly think the world is ending. And so I am imploring everybody listening today, I honest to God could give one flat crap where your political affiliation lies. That is your business. You're an American, that gets to be your business. What I would tell you is no matter where your political affiliation lies, I would ask you to stick that on the back burner and place your mind into observing what's working and what's not working in our modern world. And what's not working is one size must fit all. That just doesn't work. And I understand there are people in the United States that are terrified of a system that evolves. But an evolved system, gang, I want you to think about computers. Okay, computers, think about it. We all hate the new operating systems when they come in. I mean, Windows owners, right? I hate a new upgrade in an operating system. I have to learn all this new stuff, and it's such a pain, and oh boy, my comfort levels are rocked. But 9 times out of 10, once they work the bugs out of the new OS runs the programs way better, it's smoother, it's faster, you can do more stuff with the computer. Everything has to evolve, okay? And the United States' operating system is 50 years past evolving, gang, especially in the areas of race equality, of gender equality. And gang, it's so embedded in us as Americans, this system, we don't even understand how broken it is until we really start to fix it. Or until we really start to look at someone else's journey, like someone with black or brown skin or a transgender person's journey. I mean, I'm a garden variety lesbian. I'm a white girl anymore. I'm as banal as a glass of milk. All right. So, this is not, every generation has its big struggles. And so we're being asked to evolve. And in that, we're being asked to see people for who they are. And we're being asked not to make messiahs out of people, because that just sets those folks up to fail, gang. I'm glad nobody's making a messiah out of Joe Biden. I'm glad everybody's looking at him and saying, well, his big heyday with Barack Obama, but he's a non-harmful person who means well. And I don't think he's going to do a whole lot in 4 years, but I'd rather vote for him because he's not going to wreck anything in 4 years. People see him mostly as a kind, semi-ineffectual person who will hold a place of peace. Now, I don't know what Joe Biden's going to do or not do. But I know he's going to hold a space for just chill. And that's his big thing at 77 years old. And you know what? If there was a Republican presidential candidate who was going to do the same thing as Joe Biden, then that person, male or female, would be the right person for this time frame. So we're going to have to go away from political labels, and it's really going to do us a lot more good to start to see the operating system in the individual and to also understand that we've got to quit looking for a messiah because you're just not going to find it. Bernie. I love Bernie Sanders, man. Old grumpy Bernie. I call him Grumpy Uncle Bernie. He's up there just grumping and, he has amazing points. Amazing points. Yeah, we're not far enough along in the evolution of our nation to give away the idea of monetary gain yet. But we will be. We will be. And Bernie got a whole bunch of people thinking in the right direction. And so literally what we're looking at here is this is not an I Hate Trump podcast. This is an evaluation of modalities that people take in. And really, Biden didn't even think he was going to be here, so it's not even like he has that many plans. He's just kind of holding a space. And even Biden admits that. He has said this over and over again, that all he is a bridge candidate. He is bridging the old world to the new world. He is lifting up Kamala Harris. He's going to have Mayor Pete and all these people on his committees. He's going to have people that he exalts. And in that exaltation, he's going to have an opportunity to allow people to shine. The younger people, the people who understand the evolution that we're going toward. He's just kind of a safe bet at this point that's probably not going to do a whole lot on his own, except for enact a feminine leadership style, which is to hold a space for everybody to come forward with their ideas. And then he's actually going to give credit where credit is due. So Biden is going to be, should he be elected president, he is going to be enacting the feminine leadership style in even a softer feminine way than Hillary Clinton would have, in terms of allowing people to come forward. And he will also be working with Republicans, my fellow lefties, so let's not freak out about that. We've got to work with everybody to make this country heal and get things working together. And there are brilliant ideas everywhere. So, if we are going to be the ones who continue to instigate war when our leaders are trying to instigate peace, then the problem lies within us. When we have a leader instigating war, like we do now, cultural war especially, just so that they can be elevated, that's not a productive leadership style anyway, especially not in the feminine time frame. And so, again, this isn't saying I'm crazy about Joe Biden. I'm simply saying I am making an absolute projection here on what's going to work and what's not going to work, and why Trump is having such a hard time when he easily snagged the election headlines in 2016. And again, it's important to note that people, it's not even that they're voting for him. They want to vote for an America that makes sense to them. And we can bring in a new America and show them that it will also make sense and doesn't have to scare them, yet that becomes tough for them. So then we get into trying to make a messiah out of our leaders. Oh, you will lead me out of my haze in America. And many people made Trump the last great white messiah. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing a ton of stuff going around in the metaphysical community right now that's going on and on about how Trump is a light worker. He is a light worker, and he is here to enact light. And I will tell you firsthand, Mr. Trump is here to fulfill a role. He is a very old soul. He is here to fulfill a role and to embody every old world avaricistic tendency. So we can look at that in comparison to whether or not that's going to work in an evolving planet that really is going to rely on interdependency with one another, neighbors, countries, everything. He is here as that old soul to hold that narrative all the way to the end, okay? That does not, however, make him a light worker. He is an old soul and he's doing a hell of a job. And when we all die and go to heaven and we're all hanging out on the party barge, toasting margaritas, we can look back on 2020 and give a toast to old Donald Trump, who held the villain card all the way through. And for some, they'll be toasting him and say to old Donald Trump, who held the hero card until the American way of life was defeated. It just depends on your lens with this, right? So what I would tell you, though, is that no, Donald Trump is not a light worker. A light worker is someone who holds a space for elevation, who holds a space of selflessness, of self-sacrifice for the whole. A light worker is somebody who works on the bigger picture, not for themselves. And Mr. Trump is 100% about himself. He's 100% about his profits, his hiney, his brand, his family. So no, he is not a light worker, yet he is part of the big picture, doing his role, winning an Oscar for his role in as the catalytic, quote, villain, if you will, to propel us into a whole different time frame. And we wouldn't have gotten here this quickly if it wasn't for him. So yes, he is serving a grand purpose, yet the usefulness of that purpose has been demonstrated. So now it's going to be up to us to decide what we want to do with that. And even more so, it's going to be up to us to decide to stop making messiahs out of people who are our elected leadership or our bosses or our priests. I mean, it's wonderful to have a great leader. There are people who are born with a penchant for leadership, and really the new world, I would say, terminology for leadership is stewardship. So we've got all of these folks out here who are coming in, who are excellent stewards of not only people, but other projects, excellent stewards of all kinds of things. Not in that old world, if you don't do it this way, I'm going to alpha male or alpha female you into a corner and tell you I'm bullied and I feel like I need to do what you want me to do. Yet there are all sorts of different modalities coming forward in stewardship. And again, it wouldn't matter if it was Joe Biden, if it wouldn't matter if it was George Clooney, it wouldn't matter if it was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, whoever it is coming in to be president, whether it's Angelina Jolie or good old, oh God, Sarah Palin makes a rebound. I mean, whatever. The person who's going to occupy the place of stewardship in this new time frame, at least in America, at least in the United States, is going to be somebody who is going to have to be on board with this collective system. So, I think it's important that we are just seeing people for who they are. And, anybody can pick apart any politician. I don't care who. I mean, certainly Donald Trump sets himself up to be picked apart. And he does it on purpose, gang. He's not a stupid man. He does it on purpose because this is a person who knows how to manipulate media and really work the system to get his brand out there. And controversy in the 20th century, which is where he excelled, really was what drove power. Controversy drove power if you could spin it the right way. So, then we're looking at the Joe Biden model and, all this controversy that can be thrown around him. Anybody who runs for president is going to have a ridiculous amount of scrutiny and controversy thrown up as they approach the White House. It's just part of how we've, to this point, built this system of not only vetting, but also just mudslinging. It's a little of both. So as we move into this new time frame, it's important that we empower each other to be the best people that we possibly can be. One of the reasons that people get so disappointed in any given president, and I'm not talking about the normal American armchair quarterback, I'm a conservative, I hate the Democrats, I'm a Democrat, I hate the conservatives. It's not that. I'm talking about just the reason that we tend to be so critical of leadership in general is that we tend to think that these people have something that we don't. And really, we should be allowing people to advance into a position of stewardship, whether that's through election or being hired by a company or whatever, or a church. We should be depending on people who have reasonable experience in these areas, okay? Obviously, duh, right? Okay, so moving on past that, though, we tend to give a lot of our power away, especially in the United States. I talk a lot about that on this podcast, about how we give our power away all the time to the president, the priest, to the spiritual leader. We give our power away to our bosses, our spouses. We are trained to give it all away and then to buy back a feeling of adequacy through having a bigger car or a bigger house. I mean, it's a messed up system we're on here in the United States. So this is what we are in the middle of revamping over here. And this is why the iron fist modality of the 20th century, 19th, 18th, 17th, 16th, keep going back for as long as we can remember. This is why this modality no longer flies. And, I understand there's a lot of people who don't like Donald Trump. There were a ton of people who didn't like Barack Obama and were horrible to Obama and his family. Yet those same people turn around and cry foul when somebody has some sort of disapproval of this president. I think it's very important, gang, that we really work on not projecting ourselves as much into our leaders and working on our own leadership capacity at a local level. I'm not even talking about politics. I'm talking about in our home, in our community, volunteering, in our daily lives, maybe in our churches or places of faith. Or if you're not somebody who's into places of faith, maybe it's just in homeless shelters and in ways that we can give back to the community. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the empowering that's going to be necessary for us to basically fill out the rest of this COVID timeframe. And when I look down the scope at where we're going with the COVID timeframe, it's still looking like we're going to have, especially in more major metropolitan areas, some shutdowns again come late September, October-ish, kind of trickling into there. It looks like we might be having double ups of cases of COVID-19 and the flu, which could be tricky, right? And the body's not going to prioritize which one it gets. It's going to get them both if it's going to get them. And that's going to be really hard for people. So hopefully I'm wrong about that. I'd love to be dead wrong about all of that. That would be awesome. Yet that's what the ethers are showing me currently. And so with this in mind, it's very important that we make good decisions for ourselves. And of course, it is to everyone's benefit to have a leader that does not incite chaos. And again, Mr. Trump excels in that. That's how he's sold his brand for years. It's being the guy on the edge, even as the big real estate mogul. So now that this time frame in the United States really and in the world calls for a temperate approach and a balanced approach, Mr. Trump is seeing that what has always worked for him, probably for the last 50 years of his life, doesn't work anymore. And that's really been coming in over the last 18 months. So this is a person who's going to be in a lot of panic. And that panic energy is going to spread to the people who really, truly see him as the American Messiah. I mean, there are organizations who I will not name because I just don't want to give those folks this kind of airtime. However, there are organizations out there that call him the American Messiah, the last American Messiah. And they're treating Mr. Trump as if he is the last savior of the country. And again, as I pointed out earlier, probably for a lot of these folks that believe that, that's true for them, because what is America going to be if it's not favoring white people and, going off the Bible and all of these strange modalities that do not work in a giant melting pot country such as the United States. So you have to understand as we go into this time frame that we're revamping for a second version of the COVID time frame. And what does that mean for the rest of 2020? Well, at the top of the year, I was doing a lot of conversing about what 2020 was going to hold for us. And it came right out the gate saying the weirdest, heaviest part of the year was going to happen up front. And once we hit about June, July, August, right about there, things start kind of getting a little less shocking. And really what we're going to be dealing with is aftershocks at this point of everything that's happened in the front part of 2020. So we're going to be dealing with mutations in the COVID strain. We're going to be dealing with COVID doubling up with the flu. We're going to be dealing with millions of people who actually view Donald Trump as the last American Messiah. We're going to be dealing with those folks protecting what they feel is honest to God, and it doesn't resonate with my personal viewpoint, but I'm looking inside of these people, and boy, does my heart go out to them, because they are frightened. They are terrified that our country is literally turning into something that they have no idea how to identify. Now, for those of us who don't have a conservative lens to that degree, I know a lot of conservatives who look at Donald Trump and they're like, I don't know what happened. I didn't vote for him. I don't know what's going on. However, if we look at this from the lens of stewardship, okay, this is a time that we need to be stewards of our communities, of our earth, of our world. We don't have to save the world, America, yet we are part of a global network that we need to be aware of. And we have a lot of technologies that could be very helpful to other parts of the world if we'd stop only helping people who give us stuff like oil and political favors. And if we can make human beings the largest currency on earth, which is what we're moving toward, then we're going to watch this leadership style that Mr. Trump has executed over the last many years. That leadership style is going to fail globally. Okay, it failed in the United States in this time frame. And there's a lot of people that would argue with me and say, no, Trump wasn't allowed to do his job. You're only seeing this because you're, a liberal, blah. No, I'm not saying this because I'm a liberal, though I am a registered Democrat and full transparency here. However, I've never again, I'll say it again. I don't care what your political belief is. I care what kind of person you are in the world. Okay. I care who you bring to the table. If we are needing to discuss something, I care if somebody is causing disruption and chaos because they're frightened and covering their own butt instead of sucking it up and being a grown-up and coming to the table to be able to bring some emotional, spiritual, and intellectual maturity forward so we can all survive as a species. I care about that. Okay. So I don't know what you want to call that, but I care about that. I'm an integrist, I guess. And integrity is big for me. And I understand all human beings got something in their closet. They got something that's weird with them. Whatever. I'm not looking for a Messiah. I'm looking for a person in leadership here, whomever that's going to be, who can have a temperate head so that all of us can come up, feel safe enough to come together, trust one another again, and bring the world into a better place. Because the second half of this COVID timeframe, as I was discussing, from pretty much August on, is it's going to appear less chaotic. But now what we're going to be dealing with are frightened people as they look at the last great white American hope, which they are viewing as Donald Trump. Many of these folks are viewing Donald Trump as that person. And when it comes to something like the identity of a country or the identity of your entire lifestyle, folks on the left, let me put it to you this way. Look how hard everybody drew a line in the sand in Portland against authoritarian, weird rent-a-cops that were militarily outfitted. I mean, folks weren't going to lay down and die and take that, because those people in Portland that were making that line in the sand felt as though the American liberties were being stepped on. And in the same way that fervor brought forward a sense of community with the folks in Portland that were pushing back on what they felt was really weird rent-a-cops, and it was weird. That was a bad choice. That was strange and completely odd. The folks who believe that Donald Trump is the great white hope are going to be pushing back in the same way. So the first step in avoiding really exaggerated conflict is to understand where the people who are panicking are coming from. And though my lens does not allow me to view Donald Trump as a hopeful leader, I can accept that there are a lot of people who view him that way. And what the reason I'm going into such depth about this on this podcast is because it is important for us, if we are going to successfully get through the rest of 2020, to stay out of deciding that someone is against us. Now, this is going to get a little gnarly, so just hang in there with me. And if you're going to throw a brick, try to miss your phone or the device that's streaming this podcast, because I don't want you to have to replace that sucker. Yet, what I'd like to tell you here is the folks that they call them Trumpers, the Trumpers, who are really, really in favor of Donald Trump's style of leadership, because he represents to them the order that they have been living under for a long time. You know, I'm driving around some outback towns in Montana, and there are flags that are they're Trump flags. I've never seen so many flags for a political candidate. And they say really strange things. The vernacular is not quite on. Grammatically, they're making some errors. Like it'll say, there's these flags that say Trump 2020, no more bullshit. I mean, that's not the best grammatical way to put that, right? I'm just like, right, no more bullshit. You know, Trump 2020 is a lot of bullshit. One could read it that way. However, the folks who are flying that flag, for them, it means that it's BS, it's bullshit up in the White House and in Washington, and Trump is going to take care of that. Even though I'm like, oh, the grammar, come on, oh no. And then there's these other Trump flags that have Rambo's body with like some kind of a flamethrower. Sometimes I see them with a grenade launcher and this big buff guy, and then Trump's face photoshopped onto, this is a flag that's flying in Montana at certain people's properties. And it says Trump 2020 and some F-bomb thing, F the something, the socialist or some crazy thing. And you look at this and you think, wow, that's different. However, if I am to believe that the person who's flying that flag is against me as a human being, that is to go into a rationale that would say Donald Trump is against me as a human being. I don't even know Donald Trump. Come on. You know, that gets really nonsensical. And, you know, though obviously, as you can tell, my vote likely won't be cast for Mr. Trump. However, if you want to vote for him, you go right ahead, because we do live in America. And though, yes, I'm somebody who people like to call a liberal, I will fight to the end for someone's right to cast a vote that does not agree with mine, because we in this United States are made of many, many different opinions. And I will fight for the rights of other people to have whatever opinion they want. You know, let's just stay lawful and let's not victimize one another in the process. Yet, that being said, when I look at this, gang, that ideology that puts Trump's face on Rambo's body is not going to go away just because Joe Biden gets elected into the White House. You know, the millions and millions and millions of people out there who believe that their American way of life is dead if Trump doesn't make it in are still going to be there. Okay, they're still going to be showing up at work next to you in a desk. They're still going to be going to the grocery store. They're still going to be sending their kids to school. And if we actually buy into this old 20th century garbage that if you're not with me, you're against me, and that those people, as I'm pointing my finger, you can't see in the studio, but those people are my enemy, then we are going right back to the old world. And we might as well be literally, this is going to kind of sting to hear this, but it's really true. If those of us that are trying to stand in the gap for a new earth cannot understand that somebody's belief, if you will, in a presidential candidate does not make them our enemy, and we turn them into a force that we are against, then we're no better than the folks who draw a line in the sand and say you're for me or against me. We're no better than people hanging on to modalities of belief that are ugly just because we don't want to alter our way of life. Because altering our way of life would mean that we'd say, wow, that's a crazy Trump flag, and I wouldn't spend $12 on that or whatever it was, probably $50. But, made in China. But I don't, whatever. What I'm trying to say is we're going to have to transcend this idea that one person in the White House is going to save us all. It would be to our best interest to make sure that we are not reelecting people that sow chaos. And I'm not saying Joe Biden is going to save us all. I'm simply saying I don't think that guy's got enough octane in his tank to be chaotic, is all I'm saying. So whatever, that's fine. Yet, if we can all begin to deconstruct the abusive and bizarre and territorial and imbalanced polarized messages that we've taken on, especially the last 100 years in this country, especially the last 4, It's going to require us to not make people our enemy. And it's also going to require us not to make people messiahs. I have great hope that a Biden White House would return some temperance and be a bridge for fabulous things where we can work across the aisle and do incredible things in this country. Big hope, because I'm done with an aisle. Damn, if I was president of the United States, the first thing I would do is mix up the seating chart and they could frickin' live with it. We'd go every other one, Democrat, Republican, Tea Party, Green Party. I would just throw everybody together, and if people refused and quit, then we could just reappoint new senators and new people. But it's the idea that we are separate is stupid. And I'm speaking very plainly lately because we're running out of time a little bit to get our crap in a group. And if we do not adopt a cool head, then when the folks who truly believe that America is dead, if this individual named Donald Trump doesn't get back into the White House, that inspires a specific kind of fear. And that inspires a specific kind of potential violence. When somebody believes that they are trying to reinstate their Messiah, it becomes a holy war. All right? This is why I'm trying to tell everybody, hey, I think Joe Biden will do a great job personally. I have dear friends and family that think Donald Trump is doing a great job. Welcome to America. Big freaking deal. All right? Go cast your vote. Be a good person. Work in your communities. Yet, it's going to be on all of us. It's going to be on all of us who have a more temperate heart to look out into this nation. And when we see people faltering, when we see people wanting to get violent and crazy and insane because they feel that there is an end of something coming, to extend them some compassion and offer them a seat in the rowboat with you. These are folks who see themselves as splashing around in a tumultuous, freezing cold ocean after their ship has sunk. That's a lot of the, quote, Trumpers when I look at their energy. And that makes me feel really badly for those folks. I haven't been thrilled with the way things have been rolling the last several years, yet it hasn't stopped me from doing good work in the world. Donald Trump has not stopped me from being a positive person. And some days I'm not as positive as other days, but I try. So what I'm saying is that this COVID timeframe has taught us so much, and it's really bringing some raw truths forward that are tough. And unless we want to be as polarizing as the folks who flew a Confederate flag and said, absolutely not, I'm not going to go into this good night and evolve the country, then our form of evolution, all of us, has to deal with compassion, taking a breath. And I'm not saying laying down and dying. If somebody's storming a Capitol with rifles and acting like asshats, obviously we have to do something, you guys. Yet I'm talking about how we approach one another in this time frame. And let's not deify people, okay? Joe Biden is one guy. He's 77 years old. He served as the vice president. He probably knows what it takes to be president. He has no interest in forging his name in the history books. He already feels like he did, okay? He's literally just being the drawbridge that's fallen across the moat and saying, walk over me. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's build something different. And Mr. Trump is hanging on by one bending backwards fingernail. And I hope that gives you the creeps as much as it did me, because it should. It should make you so uncomfortable how this poor guy is hanging on to an old world that has already passed away. And that's why people are scared. And it hasn't passed away if you're a person of color. It's still very difficult to be gay in Alabama. So there's lots of work we need to do in consciousness, gang. Yet that's what I'm talking about. This issue is not political. It's an issue of consciousness. It's an issue of consciousness. And, it's intriguing to me how many people. Well, Trump's been very successful in, I was going to say something and I'm changing the way I say it. Trump's been very successful in hiding behind his supporters. In other words, he says, well, if people don't like me, that means they don't like you. And the bottom line is, who knows? We could bump into Donald Trump on the Love Boat in the Tahiti room and drinking a Mai Tai. And maybe if he wasn't president, he'd just be that loud, weird guy who just makes stupid off-color jokes but is reasonable to be around at a party. You know, who knows what the guy's actually like? I don't think we know that. I don't think Donald Trump knows that. Yet what I would tell you is that if we continue to go forward and people decide just because I may not resonate with Donald Trump's leadership style, that doesn't mean I hate all conservatives or I hate the conservative way of life or I can't stand Republicans. You know, hey man, apples are fruit, but not all fruits are apples. So in this time frame, I'm asking us all as we go forward to be successful with the second part of this COVID experiment, to stop making people into messiahs, to just see people for the people that they are, especially as we come up in this presidential election. Understand, we now see what somebody can do with 4 years if they go in willy-nilly, come with a consciousness that is surrounded in chaos and deflection. And now we know what that looks like, okay? It doesn't work very well. And so here we are, and we are all going to have to be kinder and gentler. And literally, this is the lesson that good old Don has brought to everybody, is kinder and gentler is the way to go. And you can be tough and justice can be served and all these things, and all the Old Testament justice coming down like a hammer. Everybody wants to see justice served. There are people in this country who believe that our Supreme Court justices who uphold abortion are going to burn in hell and that justice is not served because lives are at stake. You know, if we just can make it a big picture here, and understand to get through the rest of this COVID-19 timeframe and what we're going to see coming up in the country with people defending what they feel is the American way of life, because technically it's all they've known. If we encounter that and we fight that with fire, you know, I put out a meme that I caught hell with from my firefighter friends. But the meme was, if you fight fire with fire, you burn the whole forest down. And my crackshot firefighter friends were like, that's actually not true. You actually have to burn off parts of the forest so that the fire doesn't spread. And I'm like, you guys, I get it. But most people are not crackshots with the right place to put the fire. So if we can all become the crackshots with the fire and only burn out what's necessary so that the fire doesn't jump the road, that's one thing. Most people don't know how to handle that fire. They just take a flamethrower and blast the forest with it, and because they're mad, because it comes out of a place of pain, you know? And, you know, to all of my listeners that are Gen Zs and millennials who are so disgusted with this corporocracy that America has placed into power, I'll tell you, I'm disgusted with it too. I'm Gen X. A lot of the boomers are disgusted with it. A lot of the boomers, they were the original folks who stepped up against the establishment, were the baby boomers. And a lot of those boomers still believe that it's wrong. So I would ask everybody not to lose hope out there, because we are all part of the solution. And the best shot we've got is to elect people into office who will listen to the people and who will be stewards of the system rather than trying to, what is my legacy? Look at me rush through. It's all about me. We need to get people in there who have enough smarts and brains and humility and power. Just in case somebody gets out of line, you got to have a little ass kicker in you to be the president. However, you know, getting in these folks, to my Gen Zs and millennials, this is important. And let me tell you, yes, it is a hellish corporocracy that has run off the rails, America. Yet we are in the process of fixing that. And we've just seen what it looks like if we don't. So to my conservative friends out there that think that if Joe Biden gets elected, he's going to turn the place into a great big giant socialist meltdown, that's not true. That's just not true. That's not going to happen. All Joe Biden's going to do is take a wet cloth and start whacking the weeds and putting out fires. That's pretty much going to be his entire presidency. And then trying to initiate some positive things for the next 4 years. So it's just giving away our fear, gang. And you don't have to vote for anybody. I'm just simply telling you, vote for yourself. Vote for yourself. What do I mean by that? You don't have to believe a president's going to save us, because a president is not going to save us. We are. We are. And we're going to hold whoever gets whoever gets elected, we're going to hold them to account, unless it's Mr. Trump, and he pretty much keeps paying everybody else off. So we'll see how long that lasts. However, I think he's got a very slim chance, gang. So what I would tell you is that if we can grow as a nation and come out of politics and go into consciousness, it's going to be really hard not to judge people who don't share our consciousness. But just remember, it's no fun for you to be judged by people when they don't share your consciousness. That's no fun. So can we just give people a little grace to be where they're at, as long as, again, we're not victimizing people, as long as we're being lawful? Because it's going to take all of us having a heart to get through the rest of 2020. Not a head. The head has failed us dreadfully. I'm not saying don't use your discernment. I'm not saying don't research your candidates. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying if we cannot evolve to a system that doesn't need political labels and be okay with it, and maybe be awkward with it at first, especially people like me who've worked for years for the cause and all these things, and I'm always going to be who I am. Yet even I, at this point, see the foolishness in getting behind a franchise, a political franchise, instead of getting behind the hearts of people. We've got to get behind the hearts of people. And we've got to get behind the hearts of people who have a heart after the people. And that includes leadership in our own communities. So if you're somebody who has a heart after people, model that trust for other people. Show them what's possible by being kind and by being gracious. Show people what's possible. I don't mean be phony. I don't mean not rattle a cage when bullcrap needs to be shut down. Yet we don't need to be god-awful when eradicating systems that don't work. So watch who you're trying to make into a messiah. Are you trying to make Joe Biden into the messiah? He's just a dude, man. Are you trying to make Donald Trump into the messiah? He's just a dude, man. And instead, let's throw behind folks who are willing to work for folks. And I mean that in all regard. And please, as we go into this next September-October timeframe, please be mindful when we see violence. We're going to see an uptick in violence, gang. I'm seeing it here in my home state, my home city. And we're going to see an uptick in violence. People are going a little stir crazy with COVID-19. If you need to go to, if your gyms are open, go to the gym and work it out. If you need to hang a boxing bag in your garage and whack it out, do it. If whatever it is, cry it out, talk to friends. But we are all learning how to be completely different people in a totally different kind of society that requires us to trust each other. And it's scary. So can we have a little grace with one another? Please. The more we don't have grace, the more violence erupts. And the more violence that erupts, the less grace we want to give people. You don't have to be a saint. Be human. Be direct. Speak your mind. Speak it from the heart of compassion and kindness. We don't have to be a hammer. The whole entire world is not a nail. People with opinions that are different than mine are not a nail. Okay? It's not about conquest. It's about repairing. It's about building. It's about growing. It's about feeling hopeful and trusting. It's about not hating people who are afraid the United States is bursting into flames because, we're actually transcending, hopefully, in the next many years, racism. I mean, come on. This is good stuff, people. We all have a place at the table if we will take it. So that's what I want to tell you going into the second part of this time frame. We all have a place at the table if we will take it. And there will be people who don't want to sit next to me and don't want to sit next to you, and that's okay. Because the idea of enemies is only existing to keep sociopaths in power. If somebody is forcing you to hate somebody, they've got a reason. Okay? So let's just dial it back. Let's try something new. We're all trying to learn and grow. We're all evolving in this, going from 3D to 5D at the same time. Let us work for hopefulness. Let us work for goodness. If you're somebody that believes that's getting Donald Trump elected, well, then you go for it. Like I said, I support your American right to support your candidate, by God. What I will say to everybody is let's get our hearts aligned with just making it a better world. Not how, but in the application of the heart. Because for some, that's taking guns away. For some, that's taking abortion away. We don't need to go down those rabbit holes right now. Right now, all we need to do is remember what it feels like to trust one another. And we can sculpt the way the rest of it's going to work as we go. But we can't do anything without that trust, gang. All right. Go forward. I know it's a lot. This is kind of a big old heavy podcast. I don't mean to sound preachy, yet I'm looking into the future, gang. And if we cannot make a few course corrections, then if I may just speak plainly, shit is going to get so real that none of us are going to like it. And that is unnecessary. That is unnecessary. We won't have exactly a civil war. Yeah, we don't need to have militias popping up and terrorizing people. It is unnecessary. Okay? It's unnecessary. So let's all do our part. And, I know, take a deep breath, go love, and go trust, okay? Okay, I will see you next podcast.